Good evening, and welcome to the first ever TEDx event at Eaglebrook. We are very excited to have all of you with us tonight, and for you to experience this moment in Eaglebrook's history. This all started 2 years ago when a group of sixth formers had the idea to bring TEDx to Eaglebrook. Tonight, we are hosting an event that is officially licensed by TED. To give you a brief overview of TED, I would like to share with you their motto, ideas worth spreading. Our 5 speakers tonight, we believe, have truly inspirational ideas that are worth sharing. We hope you enjoy and have a good night.
Hi, Mac Patty. I would like to thank Eaglebrook and the TEDx committee for doing this. I think they did a really good job. So thank you for letting me do this. I think it's really cool. But I'd like to start with a riddle, and that is, what do you get when you cross an elephant and a rhino? Elfino. So I guess you can kind of tell what part of my topic is about. But the main part is that kids can do anything that they set their minds to or anything that they believe in. My sister Brady and I are super lucky. We've been able to go to Africa a few times, or kind of more specific, Borana, which is a place in Kenya. And the Dyer family have been telling us about the poaching problems there. And around this time last year, we decided to stop hearing about this problem and decided to do something. And we found 3 steps to that, and that is, what is the problem, what is the goal, and how can you help, or how can I help? To explain a little bit more, the problem that we found was poaching. And the reason why it's a problem is because these animals could be gone by the time we Eaglebrook students are out of college, which is hard to believe and hard to think of because they're just super amazing animals and super amazing. I just think they're super cool, and I wouldn't want to live in a world without them. What is the goal? The goal that we have is to raise awareness for these animals, for them to live safe and not be in any harm of being extinct, and to raise awareness for the rangers, who are these people who risk their lives every day to protect them. And it's super hard to become one of them too. You have to go through like a series of training. It's like being a really cool army guy that basically trying to protect these animals. So as I said, we couldn't really keep on hearing about it, so we decided to try something. And we heard this Swahili phrase, which is right here, which I don't really know how to pronounce, but after I learned my Latin class here, I kind of want to learn how. But in English, it means you don't know what you can do until you try. And the name Crash and Herd is pretty simple because Crash is a group of rhino and Herd is a group of elephant. So after that, we made a website for it, and it shows a bunch of items that we sell and events that are going to happen soon. And we try to get people to sponsor us by going in our town in Virginia and knocking on local businesses' doors and trying to get them to sponsor us. And we learned that probably about only 1 out of 100 people will say yes. But after we got enough people, we were able to host a movie night as our kind of kickoff event. And we showed the movie The Lion King because Disney was inspired by the people in Borana because they thought it was just a super amazing place like we thought. A fun fact, Pride Rock is actually called Frog Rock because if you stand in a certain spot, it looks like a frog. So then we decided to sell items with these women in Africa. There's one right here actually. And what's different about these here and stuff that are like this is that they're all one solid color. And the reason that is because in their culture, they all mean different things. Red means strength, black means unity, blue means nourishment, yellow means fertility, white means purity, and orange means friendship. So a lot of people will tell us that this is something too hard for us to do, or that we shouldn't even try to do it, and that we're too young. But I want to say thank you to a bunch of other people who have helped us, and these people are Miss Dixon, Huey, the Dyers, Sam, and Mr. Cooper. And so thank you for encouraging us. And the Salamander Resort has been a super big sponsor of us because they've let us host a 5K race there. And it took a lot of work, just like hosting this TEDx talk. But it took a lot of work, and about 2 weeks before we even started it, only 16 people signed up, which is just hard to think of because it takes that much work. But after once it started, over 100 people came, and that just felt really good that this many people care and believe our problem too. And this June, we're also hosting a second annual in the same spot. And we're also doing a bunch of virtual runs, which are, you can run anywhere you want, anywhere in the world, basically. And you'll go to the website, type in how far you ran, how long it took you, and we'll send you a medal to thank you for your support, because every little bit helps. Sort of bring it to full circle, my sister Brady and I aren't any better than any one of you. We don't have any special potion or sauce or anything. We just found a problem and made that our goal to solve that problem. And we want to make sure to not let being a kid stop you from achieving your goals. If you find a problem, go for it, because after all, you don't know what you can do until you try. Asante.
For our first raffle tonight, we'll be giving out 3 Eaglebrook athletic shirts. In order to find out who gets these, we need to find 3 numbers. We need to get 3 numbers from the audience between 1 and 100. So, any volunteers? Coffee? 13. Walker Craig, please come up here and get your shirt. Can I get another number? 23? 23. Juan Garza. And one final number? Yes? 84. Jeff Field. Thank you for all those who entered the raffle.
So, I'm an Iranian-American Muslim female, like all of you, and I'm also a social justice comedian, something that I insist is an actual job. Now, to explain what that is, let me tell you how I got here. I've performed all over the country, and let me tell you, America is majestic, right? It's got breathtaking nature, waffle houses, and diabetes as far as the eye can see. It is really something. Now, the American population can be broken up into 3 main categories. There's mostly wonderful people, haters, and Florida. Now, besides Florida, the most troubling category here are the haters, okay? They are a minority, but they overcompensate by being extra loud. They have the Napoleon complex of demographics, and yes, some of the men do wear heels. Now, as a social justice comedian, it's my goal to convert these haters, because they hate a lot of things which lead to negative outcomes, like racism, violence, and Ted Nugent. This is not an exhaustive list. I'm probably missing 3 to 7 items. But the point is, we have to reckon with the haters. But there's variance within this group, and it's not efficient to go after all of them, right? So what I've done is I've created a highly scientific taxonomy of haters. I basically took all of the haters, I put them in a petri dish like a scientist, and this is what I found. First off, we have the trolls. These are your garden variety digital haters. They're the people who have quit their jobs so that they can post on YouTube videos all day long. There's also the drive-by haters. Now, these people will be at a stoplight, they'll wait for the light to turn green, and when it does, they yell, "Go back to your own country." Now, back in the day, they would have actually gotten out of their cars and hated you to your face, but they just don't make them like they used to, which is another sign of the decline in America. Now, the next category is the mission-oriented bigot whose group affiliation gives them cover for hating hater. Now, these guys like to hate via a seemingly nice organization like a church or a nonprofit, and they oftentimes like to speak in an old-timey voice. But the group I'm most interested in is the swing hater. Now, the swing hater is sister to the swing voter, right? They just can't decide. They're like ideological sluts who move from hating to not hating, and they do it because they don't have enough information. And this is the group I like to target with social justice comedy. Now, why comedy? Because on a scale of comedy to brochure, the average American prefers comedy, as you can see from this graph. Comedy is very popular. And by the way, this is a mathematically accurate graph generated from fake numbers. Now, the question is, why does social justice comedy work? Well, because first off, it makes you laugh, right? And when you're laughing, you enter into a state of openness. And in that moment of openness, a good social justice comedian can stick in a whole bunch of information, and if they're really skilled, a rectal exam. Now, here are some ground rules for social justice comedy. First off, it's not partisan, okay? This isn't political comedy, this is about justice, and no one is against justice. 2, it's inviting and warm. It makes you feel like you're sitting inside of a burrito. 3, it's funny but sneaky, like you could be hearing an interesting treatise on income inequality that's encased in a really sophisticated poop joke, right? Now, here's how I see social justice comedy working. Now, a few years ago, I rounded up a bunch of Muslim American comedians in a nonviolent way, and we went around the country to places like Alabama, Arizona, Tennessee, Georgia, places where they love the Muzzies, and we did stand-up shows, and we called the tour "The Muslims Are Coming." Now, we turned this into a movie, and then after the movie came out, a known hate group spent $300,000 on an anti-Muslim poster campaign with the MTA, that's the New York City subway system. Now, the posters were truly offensive, not to mention poorly designed. I mean, if you're gonna be bigoted, you might as well use a better font. But we decided, why not launch our own poster campaign, right, that says nice things about Muslims while promoting the movie. So myself and fellow comedian Dean Obidallah decided to launch the Fighting Bigotry with Delightful Posters campaign. We raised the money, worked with the MTA for over 5 months, got the posters approved, and then 2 days after they were supposed to go up, the MTA decided to ban the posters, citing political content. Let's take a look at a couple of those posters. Here's one. Facts about Muslims. Muslims invented the concept of a hospital. Okay. Fact, grown-up Muslims can do more push-ups than baby Muslims. Fact, Muslims invented Justin Timberlake. Let's take a look at another one. The ugly truth about Muslims. They have great frittata recipes. Now, clearly, frittatas are considered political by the MTA. Either that, or the mere mention of Muslims in a positive light was considered political, but it isn't. It's about justice. So we decided to change our Fighting Bigotry with Delightful Posters campaign and turn it into the Fighting Bigotry with a Delightful Lawsuit campaign. So basically what I'm saying is a couple of dirtbag comedians took on a major New York City agency, and the comedians won. Yeah, thank you. Victory was a very weird feeling. I was like, is this what blonde girls feel like all the time? Because this is amazing. All right, here's another example. I'm asked everywhere I go, why don't Muslims denounce terrorism? We do, but okay, I'll take the bait. So I decided to launch thedailydenouncer.com. It's a website that denounces terrorism every day of the week while taking the weekends off. Let's take a look At an example, they generally appear as single-panel cartoons. I denounce terrorism. I also denounce people who never fill the paper tray. The point of the website is that it denounces terrorism while recognizing that it's ridiculous that we have to constantly denounce terrorism. But if bigotry isn't your thing, social justice comedy is useful for all sorts of issues. For example, myself and fellow comedian Lee Camp went to the Cayman Islands to investigate offshore banking. Now, the United States loses something like $300 billion a year in these offshore tax havens. Not to brag, but at the end of every month, I have something like $5 to $15 in disposable income. So we walked into these banks in the Cayman Islands and asked if we could open up a bank account with $8.27. The bank managers would indulge us for 30 to 45 seconds, right, before calling security. Security would come out, brandish their weapons, and then we would squeal with fear and run away because, and this is the last rule of social justice comedy, sometimes it makes you want to take a dump in your pants. Now, most of my work is meant to be fun. It's meant to generate a connection and laughter. But yes, sometimes I get run off the ground by security. Sometimes I get mean tweets and hate mail. Sometimes I get voicemails saying that if I continue telling my jokes, they'll kill me and they'll kill my family. And those death threats are definitely not funny. But despite the occasional danger, I still think that social justice comedy is one of our best weapons. I mean, we've tried a lot of approaches to social justice, like war and competitive ice dancing. But still, a lot of things are still kind of awful. So I think it's time we try and tell a really good poop joke. Thank you.
Now it's there. My grandfather used to tell me a lot of stories, starting from his traveling stories and life lessons, and some boring stories that contained a lot about the topic that I'm going to talk about tonight. So I decided the topic that impacted him most without this all boring life lesson stories, which was being the owner of yourselves. And tonight that's going to be our topic, the 3 O's. My grandfather used to take me speeches more than stories because it was really long. And then one night, he told me about this being the owner of yourselves, starting from small things. I was 7, I didn't really know what that meant, but I still kept it in my mind, thought it was important. And then I started to do little things by doing my chores, and then cleaning up and keeping takeaway when I was supposed to study. I started by small things. And then my grandfather started to talk more about this topic, like this. He gave me a really long speech, and then I was still young. I was 8 years old or 9 years old. And then I noticed that I learned a few things, but it was kind of off topic, that a human being could sleep while eating at the same time. And then while we were moving, we had a new house, so we were moving, our bookshelf was organized, and then I was moving my small bookshelf that I really liked. And then this random book just fell out of the sky. Probably the bookshelf though. So it's super nerdy, don't worry. It's called Studying is the Respect of My Life. So it sounds super nerdy. But the study here, I don't think it's mainly about the actual study, math, science, English. It's mostly about the life studying, so it really impacted me. And then it had the same contents that my grandfather used to tell me, which also kind of made me bored out, and I was like, nah, it's again. But it also impacted me a lot because I found that it was really funny that it also matched my grandfather's story, and I really liked the story itself too. It contains stories about starting from small chores or like small things, but like putting your tech away or YouTube away, and also having time management on you, because when you do this, like sometimes you do something else while doing this, like for example, when you're in studio, you can watch YouTube and like do article at the same time. That's not being the owner of yourself. The book says that if you want to be an actual owner of yourself, you have to do one thing at the same time. So I got motivated by this book, and I started to write my book, which the title is Normal Life. I know the title is super normal because it's normal life. So it contains a story about the same thing that the other book also contains, but an easier version. It has my life story, kinda, and my grandfather's story. It also contains the book, the motivation. So this also has it also has the meaning of that book. But the main reason why I named it Normal Life is because many people can take different paths. Like someone can be a doctor, someone can be an actor, somebody can become, I don't know. So it's a normal life. You can feel like it's a normal life, even though you're a star. You might be, it's normal. I don't care. But I thought about this, and it was normal life without the question mark until I finished the book. After I finished the book, I added a question mark there because I thought that it's not a normal life, and actually, because there's no definition that divides normal life and special life, and you don't know which life is a special life because your life you might feel it's normal, but it might be a special life from some people. So I felt like this, and I wrote this book with all of my motivations, and I really enjoyed it, and I started to make little changes in myself too. So I used to, okay, I'll tell you this, my advisor, sorry. I used to watch YouTube and study sometimes, yeah. I know it's funny, and I'm not supposed to do that. And yeah, I did it, and I got caught by Mr. Fay sometimes. And then after writing this book, I kind of started to make a change writing for the TEDx and writing for my book. I started to make little changes to get away from YouTube and then actually studying what I'm supposed to study and then actually to write my story when I'm supposed to do it. So I had better time management, which was also in the before story. So I think starting from the small things is more important than doing big things like doing something to the society or something. I think it's really important to do something small and start from small things because that might be it might develop to a big thing. So good luck and be a good owner of yourself. Thank you.
Can raffle. So, anyone want these hats? No one.
You right there? I'm sorry, we already bought these, but we can give you these hats, which are Eaglebrook baseball hats.
So now Matthew here is gonna call one of y'all to yell out random numbers. So listen carefully to him, please.
So, anyone? You right there? 50. Monica Wu. Congratulations. A second number? You right there? 2. Alvaro Valverde. Hey. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your shows.
Everybody tonight. Thank you. I'm Patrick Sweeney, and tonight I'm going to tell you how fear can transform your life. And if you're a parent or a teacher, I'm going to tell you how it can have a dramatic impact on the likelihood of success of children. And who better to lead the congregation than a reformed sinner? That's my confession I'm going to make to you tonight. For the longest time, I was the world's biggest wimp. Now I live an amazing life doing really crazy adventures all over the place. And I found that I have a superpower. And my superpower is courage. And I'm going to share that with all of you tonight. It's a gift that I want to give, and some of the science behind it, which is fascinating, I think you'll find really intriguing. I'm going to leave you with 3 lessons. They're going to be lessons in how to live a life of impact, courage, and be the hero you always wanted to be with your family, with yourself, or in a time of crisis. In order to do that, we've got to go back to 1976. Now, I know the parents in the room get that. Kids, they'll have to explain that one to you. It's a little bit dated. But imagine, if you will, a duplex in a rough and tumble suburb of Boston. You're on the bottom floor of the duplex, and you see a family sitting there. There's a young boy on the floor playing with his G.I. Joe doll. He's wrestling with the kung fu grip. He's not even old enough to be worried about Barbie yet. His mom and dad are planted on the couch in front of their black and white RCA TV. His brother's next to him, annoying him like always. When all of a sudden, on the screen, comes a scene of disaster. Boys, shut up! He's transfixed. On the screen, he sees a monochromatic flame shooting up from the tail of a Delta DC-9. A newscaster half screams, half spits out the words that an instrument pilot was coming in on approach. He flew too low in the fog, cartwheeling the plane down the runway, scattering metal debris and body parts all over Boston's Logan Airport, killing all 100 people on board. Immediately, that scene is written on the boy's very sophisticated hard drive. Fast forward 2 weeks, and that same family is packing for a trip to Atlanta, Georgia. Their aunt and uncle has a new puppy, and it needs a home. So the family's super excited to go down to Atlanta and get the puppy. They haul their stuff into Logan Airport, and all of a sudden the boy sees across the smoky terminal a Delta logo on the tail of a plane. He's immediately hit with an electric wall of fear. He has a terrible response emotionally to seeing that, because that image has popped back out of his hard drive onto his mind's eye. He rips and pulls at his mother's hand, trying to get out of here. I don't want to die! He kicks and he pulls and he screams, get me out of here! He throws such an apoplectic fit, they're kicked out of Logan Airport. And they're forced to drive the 15 hours to Atlanta. That ensures 2 things that are both tragic. Number 1, that he doesn't confront the fear, so it gets further written on his hard drive. Number 2, that he catches hell for the next 40 years at every family gathering. And he's bullied about it to this day. Well, not surprisingly, that was me. And that was my fear frontier. Maybe you have a fear of snakes. Maybe you have a fear of the water. Everybody has a fear frontier. Maybe it's failure. We all have a place where we come to where we've got a moment of fear. How we deal with that determines our future and our success. For 30 years, I lived with this terrible fear of flying. Every time I got on board or anywhere near an aircraft, I got more and more scared. And one thing that I found is this cowardice begets cowardice. I was even the guy in high school who was still afraid of the dark. That's how bad things were. I lived with this for 30 years. And then my worst fear came to fruition. It could have happened to any one of us. I was working out, I was in my mid-30s, and I had a pain in my arm. And it kept getting worse over the next few days. But like everything else, I was afraid to go to the doctors. I finally went, and when I got into the doctors, he told me I had no white blood cells, no immune system. That got me a ticket to the Johns Hopkins Leukemia Matinee, and this was a special showing for rare cases. Now, I was petrified. All I could think about in the hospital was my 1-year-old daughter. Would the image she had of her dad be the guy who was too much of a coward to get on a plane and take her to Disney World? I was suddenly choked with a deathbed feeling of regret, like I had missed out on so much in life and I was going to miss out on so much more. that's when I decided that I was going to kick that disease. And when I got out, I'd take flying lessons. Not to put the story to bed too early, but I did get out. I did beat leukemia. And I started taking flying lessons. And over the next several months, my entire life changed just because I went mano a mano with that flying demon. Everything in my world changed. And I realized I've been living like a caterpillar on this tiny leaf, inching around, eventually ensconcing myself in this cowardly cocoon. And I never realized it until I flew. And then when I got my wings and literally learned to fly, my whole world changed. And in fact, I fell in love with flight. I got my instrument rating, my commercial rating, and nowadays I compete in acrobatics every year. This is a competition last year. And if this, the idea of being upside down with the ground coming at you at high speed, activates your fear frontier, maybe it's speaking in front of a big audience. Maybe it's asking a girl out on a date. We all have a fear frontier. How we deal with those determines our success. And that brings me to lesson number 1. You don't know how great life can be until you get to the other side of your fear frontier. The choice you make determines what your life is like. You only have 2 choices when it comes to fear. You can either tame fear, or fear can rip you apart bit by bit. I was so enamored and so amazed how my life changed when I got beyond my fear frontier and I started to tame fear. I wanted to make sure my kids had the same thing. So as a dad, I stumbled on something that the Navy SEALs had known for decades. And when I first did it, I got a lot of flack from other people because they said, fear, you should be avoiding it. And in fact, that's the number 1 strategy people have for dealing with fear, is avoidance. It's also the biggest mistake you can make. And that causes you the most damage in your life, avoiding fear. So I wanted to give my kids this gift. When they were 3 years old, I started them skiing. When they were 4 years old, we were rock climbing. At 7, they went paragliding. I didn't have a dad handbook. I was just doing the best I could. I kept trying to extend their fear frontier, nudging them out of their comfort zone. And I'd meet parents and they'd say, rock climbing and mountaineering with kids, that's crazy. And then I'd meet the kids and they'd say, wow, rock climbing. Can you talk to my mom and dad? And that brings me to point number 2. There is a dramatic difference. They're 2 very different animals, risk and fear. Risk is the probability or the likelihood of something bad happening. Fear is an emotional response to a physical feeling in the body. They often get confused, and people don't understand why. If I knew the difference between risk and fear, when I was a 7-year-old boy at Logan Airport, I would have never let my parents drive. Just to put it in perspective, in our lifetime, in this room, 3 people will die in car accidents. It would take 25 rooms this size filled up to have 1 person in an airplane crash. That's the difference between knowing the risk. So why isn't a mom who drops her son or daughter off at school, who's texting her boss at the same time, which is incredibly dangerous, why isn't she full of fright because of that? Because familiarity fades fear. And that can work to our benefit, and it can also work to our detriment. But just knowing that fact makes a big difference in our life. So one of the things that I found is with the Navy SEALs, there's fear-based behavior that doesn't make any sense until you figure out why you're doing it, what the motivation is. If you think about it for a second, fear-based decision-making rarely makes sense. Why is it you can be sitting on your couch at home, safe and sound, and watching something on the TV that you know isn't real, but have a tremendous fear response? It doesn't make any sense. Why do we let our amygdala stay in such control of us? It's almost like end of the solar, and fear is on the other end coming from Uranus. All right. How risky is life, really? Well, I don't know, but I can guarantee you none of us are going to get out alive. So we might as well live with the most courage, the most excitement, and the most passion we can. We need to take a page out of the Navy SEAL handbook, because it's really all about controlling the glands. I mentioned the amygdala before. That's a small gland at the base of your brain that's shaped like an almond. It's there and it's fully developed at birth. It does three things. It handles the three F's: fight, flight, or freeze. It was there to keep us from getting attacked by a saber-toothed tiger. What we found out over the last 100,000 years is freezing like a deer in the headlights or bolting every time there was a rustle in the grass didn't exactly make us the best dinner guests. So we developed something that's kind of like adult supervision for the amygdala. It's called the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex, this is the rub, isn't developed until you're in your mid-20s. The amygdala, the thing responsible for the crazy reaction of mine at the airport, that flight or fright, developed at birth. The adult supervision and the ability to make a rational decision, not developed until your mid-20s. And how it develops can determine your whole life. That's what Navy SEALs do. Every time they go through training at BUDS, which is Basic Underwater Demolition School, each day it gets more and more intense until finally during Hell Week, they're tossed bound at the wrists and ankles into a pool, blindfolded with instructors literally beating on them. Most of these recruits are between 20 and 24 years old. What the Navy's doing is pre-wiring them for courage. I got so fascinated by fear, I started interviewing experts all around the world. One of the experts that I talked with told me there's something called preconditioning, extinction before preconditioning. And I just refer to this as preconditioning. They studied Navy SEALs and did an article in the Military Special Operations Journal, and it shows that Navy SEALs have a higher resiliency to stress than ordinary soldiers, and they have less incidence of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. The reason I believe this is because they're preconditioning. They're training their mind to do this. I used to think breathing was only important when I was racing. I was a rower, and I thought it was only important then, but it turns out it's one of their techniques. So is increasing the intensity. So the paradox with all this is you have to get scared to build courage. You have to feel when the amygdala starts to take over, because what happens is you feel your heart rate increasing, your breathing increasing, your pupils will dilate. That's the amygdala trying to take over. But if your prefrontal cortex can stay the boss, then you can be a superman or a superwoman, because you've got this cocktail going through your body that makes you stronger, makes you think better. It's there to help us survive. If you can use your prefrontal cortex to be the boss, then you can do amazing things. So one of the ways to do that is using the neurons in your brain continually getting scared. This is a video from MIT's lab. That's the amygdala of a mouse. And you can see what's happening. Every time one of those neurons fires, if they continue to fire the same neurons, they'll build a pathway. Neurons that fire together will end up wiring together. So the courage pathway becomes easier and easier to travel. So courage has a halo effect. If you're trying to get over fear of heights and you start rock climbing on the weekends, one thing you'll find is you can go ask your boss for a raise, or you can go ask your teacher for extra work, and you feel less anxiety because of it. So the point number 3 I'm going to give you is a tool for building up this courage, for creating that wire. So lesson number 1 was you don't know how great life is until you get beyond your fear frontier. Lesson number 2, huge difference between risk and fear. Lesson number 3 is that you need a tool set. You need something you can rely on to build up that courage. I use what's called the BASE methodology. The B is for breathing. Take a breath in for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, and let it out for 4. If you keep doing that, that'll stabilize your heart rate. The second one, the A, is to assess the situation. So many times we project bad things into the future. Instead, be present. Say, what's going on right now? Can I make a plan? Can I get in control? The S, it's counterintuitive, but smile. If you smile, no matter how forced, it has a direct link to your central nervous system, just using those muscles in your face. And then E is for encouragement, for self-talk. Tell yourself that's not fear you're feeling, it's excitement, that's a challenge. If you use this BASE methodology, you might find that, well, try it for yourself. If you don't like public speaking, next time you go out to dinner, stand up and make a toast. And when you make a toast, maybe you'll only get through the B and start breathing and then have to sit down. But each time, your courage will grow. It'll get more and more easier to do something courageous. So if you practice getting yourself scared, you can learn to be a great leader. There's a whole ocean of great leaders who have learned to tame fear and done amazing things with it. But there's a vast, barren desert of timid souls who let their life be ruled by fear. And fear from manipulation from politicians, from marketers, from the press. Don't be one of those people. Go out and learn how to be courageous. Learn how to be the hero you want to be. Remember, excuses are just fear in disguise. Go out and live the most passionate, exciting, adventurous life you can. Go out and find fear and live the life of a butterfly. Thank you very much.
Meet Tony. He's my student. He's about my age, and he's in San Quentin State Prison. When Tony was 16 years old, one day, one moment, it was Mom's gun. Just flash it, scare the guy. He's a punk. He took some money. We'll take his money. That'll teach him. Then last minute, I'm thinking, I can't do this. This is wrong. My buddy says, come on, let's do this. I say, let's do this. And those 3 words Tony's going to remember. Because the next thing he knows, he hears the pop. There's the punk on the ground. 25 to life, parole at 50 if you're lucky, and Tony. So when we meet in my philosophy class in his prison, and I say, in this class, we will discuss the foundations of ethics, Tony interrupts me. What are you going to teach me about right and wrong? I know what is wrong. I have done wrong. I am told every day, by every face I see, every wall I face, that I am wrong. If I ever get out of here, there will always be a mark by my name. I'm a convict. I am branded wrong. What are you going to tell me about right and wrong? So I say to Tony, sorry, but it's worse than you think. You think you know right and wrong? Then can you tell me what wrong is? No, don't just give me an example. I want to know about wrongness itself, the idea of wrong. What is that idea? What makes something wrong? How do we know that it's wrong? Maybe you and I disagree. Maybe one of us is wrong about the wrong. Maybe it's you, maybe it's me. But we're not here to trade opinions. Everyone's got an opinion. We are here for knowledge. Our enemy is thoughtlessness. This is philosophy. And something changes for Tony. Could be I'm wrong. I'm tired of being wrong. I want to know what is wrong. I want to know what I know. What Tony sees in that moment is the project of philosophy. The project that begins in wonder, what Kant called admiration and awe at the starry sky above and the moral law within. What can creatures like us know of such things? It is the project that always takes us back to the condition of existence, what Heidegger called the always already there. It is the project of questioning what we believe and why we believe it, what Socrates called the examined life. Socrates, a man wise enough to know that he knows nothing. Socrates died in prison. His philosophy intact. So, Tony starts doing his homework. He learns his whys and wherefores, his causes and correlations, his logic, his fallacies. Turns out Tony's got the philosophy muscle. His body's in prison, but his mind is free. Tony learns about the ontologically promiscuous, the epistemologically anxious, the ethically dubious, the metaphysically ridiculous. That's Plato, Descartes, Nietzsche, and Bill Clinton. So, when he gives me his final paper, in which he argues that the categorical imperative is perhaps too uncompromising to deal with a conflict that infects our everyday and challenges me to tell him whether, therefore, we are condemned to moral failure, I say, I don't know. Let us think about that. Because in that moment, There's no mark by Tony's name. It's just the two of us standing there. It is not professor and convict. It is just two minds ready to do philosophy. And I say to Tony, let's do this. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Why does living in tight quarters in high pressure situations bring people closer together? Imagine being put in the scariest situation of your life with a group of absolute strangers that you've never met before. This is the situation I was put in 2 years ago when my parents decided to send me to camp in Israel. Let me put this into context. I left mid-July from Paris airport with a group of French Jews traveling to Israel. The only people I knew were Florian and Alexis, my godmother's sons, who had decided to go on this trip with me. The whole camp experience started out a little bit rough. We arrived at the airport in Paris as a group, only to find out that our flight was delayed. When we arrived in Israel, finally, after a 5-hour delay at the airport, we found out that the port we were supposed to use to get on the cruise we were scheduled to get on was closed, and we had to sleep on the coach bus. Gosh. We all woke up and got on the boat. The cruise to Cyprus from Haifa was a very interesting experience, full of conferences and talks given by interesting leaders in the European Jewish community. They had different points of views, not all of which everyone agreed with, and therefore some tension came with these talks. However, when we heard the news that the Hamas, a Palestinian terror group based on and funded by the Gaza Strip, had fired missiles onto Israel, we all shared a feeling of shock. We did not, though, realize the gravity of the situation until a few days later when we arrived in Tel Aviv. The next morning, we were told that there would be a miklat drill. Miklat means bunker in Hebrew. The next morning, we were woken up by the sound of an alarm blaring over the sound of Eye of the Tiger playing on the intercom. All of a sudden, the music stopped, but the alarm continued. We all thought it was a drill, but a few moments later, standing in a white room with minimal lighting, a fridge and 2 bare mattresses, we felt the bunker shake. The vibrations flowing through the ground, the dust coming off the ceiling, the entire room was filled with silence. Silence that masked fear. After the vibrations, we would all count in whispers. If we got to 500 seconds without feeling a vibration, we were safe to leave. If not, then we would stay. The third night, we slept in the bunker. 85 people to a room 3/4 the size of this stage. Wasn't very comfortable. My 11-year-old self was terrified, scared of the realness of the situation I was in. All I could do was tell myself that it would be okay, that this too would pass, and lean on my group of friends. Because we all needed to be there for each other, we got very close. Without realizing it then, we had built relationships that would last a lifetime. An example of one of these relationships is Johan. Johan and I met at the airport in Tel Aviv and became friends instantly. So much so, in fact, that we convinced the entire camp that we were brothers. Over the course of the trip, we became closer and closer friends. This is a relationship that we've maintained over the course of the past 3 years. Last summer, we saw each other in Shanghai and Tel Aviv. Johan is now 19 and living in Taiwan, helping to forge better military relationships between China, Israel, and France as his mandatory 3 years of service to Israel. This is just one of the many relationships I was able to form and maintain. So, why does living in tight quarters under high-pressure situations bring people closer together? To me, it's easy. The more time you spend with a person, the more time you spend getting to know them. Add in the factor of the intensity of the moments that we spent together, and there you have it. Now, high-pressure situations don't have to be when your life is at risk. These situations can be found in mundane events. Not to say that these are mundane, but two parents taking care of a newborn, a family grieving the loss of another family member, or even two students preparing for an exam. The way that two Army vets who serve together can look across a room to each other and share an unspoken understanding. In reality, it depends on who you are and what the situation you are in means to you. The only thing you can do is try to acknowledge the relationships you have built during these moments and take advantage of them when you need them the most. Thank you.
This will be the final raffle item of the night. Can I please have a number from 1 to 100? Coffee. 74. Dylan Kim. Our next speaker is the only man in the entire world whose life's work, yes, his life's work, is to electrify crowds at stadiums around the world. Here he is. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Cameron Hughes.
I can't breathe. There's any oxygen in here? So here's my idea for a TED Talk. I believe we should all get up and dance in random places and throw t-shirts. Thank you. Good night. Is anyone here going through life feel like they're living like someone else? That maybe they're just not living their true self? That sometimes they have a mask on, but you just don't know how to get rid of it? I know I live like that. And I felt my true potential was being stifled by this concept of fear, rejection, and other people's expectations, and everything in between. But the power of unmasking yourself, of just getting up and doing whatever it is you want and not caring who's watching is when life really happens. Trust me, because it happened to me. When I was a kid, I tried out for all the sports teams. Didn't make any of them. Hold your tears. In the schoolyard, I was always last pick. At the tennis club, all I ever won was the sportsmanship award. Nobody wants to win the damn sportsmanship award, okay? I would go home to my mom and I'd whine. My God, I'm so dejected. I can't believe this. And Mom would say, trust me. There's other ways you can contribute to the team. And I didn't quite understand it at the time. But those were really profound words that would change my life. You know, when I was 14, came home from school one day, Mom said to me, my sister, can you come sit in the living room? My sister and I are thinking, yes, we're finally getting the puppy, right? She says, have a seat. So we sit down. She holds our hand, tells us she's just been diagnosed with breast cancer. But don't worry about it, guys. I'm going to beat this. I'm going to fight this. And my mom said, just keep living. Just keep loving. Just keep going on with things. Did my mom did she ever fight that? And 2 years later, my mother lost her battle to cancer. I was 16. I was alone. I was scared. I didn't know what to do next. And as you can probably tell, I was a mama's boy. But I had to get things back together. And I had to figure out a way to move on. A couple months later, I went back to school with this new attitude. I figured I'm going to try out for the basketball team yet again. But this time I'm going to shave my legs to see if I can be a little more aerodynamic. Guys, never do that. It didn't work. My buddy Jay and I, we try out for the team. We go to see if our name's on the gym board. And Jay screams with joy, yes, he made it. And I'm like, oh, didn't make another team again. I was 6 feet tall. How could I not make it? How much talent do I not have, right? But it was funny because in that moment, I wasn't as upset as I used to be when I was facing all the other rejection of thinking how important it was to make the sports team. You see, when the worst thing that happens to you in your life happens to you, you just kind of blow it off. Whatever. You got nothing to lose. So a couple weeks later, I surprised Jay and the rest of the basketball team at an away game. I painted my face. I put overalls on and I showed up and cheered like an absolute lunatic. I knew it was working because the away fans wanted to kill me. And the guys in my team were like, I think I like it. It took them a little while. And then at university, my buddy said, hey, you should do something different at the football games. So one Saturday morning before the big game, I go to the grocery store and I buy the largest watermelon you've ever seen in your life. I carve it out, put it on my big, beautiful noggin. I paint my face purple. I put on a cape, and I put purple leotards on because that's what. And I had a D in a fence, and I became known as Melonhead. And then I needed a job that summer. So I became the mascot for my local baseball team. Yes, folks, I was Lenny the Lynx. And I'm telling you, the lynx head was the largest thing you've ever seen in your life. You could barely go anywhere with this thing. You're starting to see a pattern of why I was single for so long. I get it, but it hurts. But something wasn't quite right, you know? I was wearing these masks, and I wasn't totally connecting with people the way I thought I could and the way I thought I should. So fast forward to a couple years later, I'm at an Ottawa Senators NHL hockey game in my hometown with a buddy of mine. And there's no excitement in the arena. There's anticipation. It's just dead quiet, and I'm really upset. And we're sitting there. And I'm like, I've got to say, watch this. And he goes, please don't. Please don't. It was too late. Because suddenly the song comes on, and I get up on my chair, and I'm dancing, and I'm dancing, and I'm just going absolutely nuts. And the crowd's looking at me like you are right now, like this guy's possessed. Get some medical help. But in that moment in your life, where whatever that might be for you, where you just decide to get up and go for it, you've got to keep dancing. Because I just kept dancing, I just kept dancing, I just kept dancing. And suddenly the craziest thing happened. The entire arena went absolutely nuts. And everyone's going crazy. I sit back down in my seat. My buddy is long gone at this point. We haven't spoken since. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, oh my God, what did I just do? And then it hit me. It totally hit me. I finally took off my mask. I finally just decided to be me, but the real me. And in that moment in your life where you cheer yourself on and you cheer yourself to try things, it's incredible what will happen in your community and how people will support you. It's pretty incredible. And I challenge everyone in this room to have that moment where you're like, you know what, enough of it. I'm just going to take my mask off and I'm just going to go for it. Because when that happens, that's when life's magic begins, my friends. That's when it begins. And your whole community will embrace you. It is unbelievable. Back to the game. Adrenaline is rushing through my body. I have no idea what's happening. And the craziest thing happened. Whistle blows, play stops. Next thing I know, 10,500 people turn around me and look at me and they're like, come on, big red white boy, let's dance. And I'm thinking to myself, I should have gone with my buddy. But I had to embrace it. So I get up from my seat and 10,500 people are like, what's he going to do? And I had no idea. So I shuffle over and I go to the aisle and I start, by the way, I'm completely sober this entire time. I swear. And I'm up there and I'm dancing and I'm going crazy and I'm going crazy. But what's crazy now is 10,500 people are cheering. They're going nuts. They're high-fiving me. The place is going off. 20 seconds later, the team scores. The play stops. I go back to my seat. Someone from the Senators came up to me. I thought they were going to make a citizen's arrest or something. Bad behavior, Cameron. But no, they just wanted my information to maybe bring me back someday to come and get crazy again. I'm like, okay. The next day, I go to what I thought as a Canadian kid was my dream job, working at a local rink for $7 an hour. And I'm sitting there, and I get the newspaper. And the front page of the newspaper says, Dancing Redhead Bandit steals show at Senators game. And I'm like, oh my God, I think that's me. And all I can think about was, how do I explain this to my dad tonight? But in that moment, my mother's words rang so true to me. There's other ways you can contribute to the team. But in that moment, I finally just took off my mask. That's what she was saying to me, just be yourself. You know, when you're going through what she went through, I learned so much. But ultimately, what she was saying is just be yourself. And that's what it's all about. Not being afraid, because contributing to the team isn't what it's always all about. It's finding ways that you can contribute to embrace your talents, to make your uniqueness, allows your uniqueness to shine. That's what it's all about. And that's what my mom was saying to me. It was crazy. I loved it. It was shocking. And I tell people there's no way I would have had this career had I not got up the second time. There's no way. Because had I not got up the second time, I'm sure I wouldn't have had a career performing at 1,400 sporting events for teams like the Cleveland Cavaliers, the New York Knicks, Montreal Canadiens, Edmonton Oilers, Bakersfield Condors, for over 18 million people live in 10 countries, in 40 states, and 9 provinces. And I've only been hospitalized 8 times. That's not bad. So what if the crowd hadn't cheered me on that night when I got up and went for it? Where would I be? I probably wouldn't be here. Or would I? Would I have kept going? Would I have found other ways to get up? Have you ever gotten up and it just didn't quite work the way you thought? You're like, oh, I'm not going to get up again. I'm just going to run home and hide. What do? Because all of us have this voice in our head, don't we? We have this voice in our head. Should I? Shouldn't I? Oh my God, there's this girl. I'm going to embarrass her. She's not going to like me. Oh my God, I'm never going to go out with anyone. I'm going to be single the rest of my life. Oh my God, what are my friends going to think? Oh my God, my friends are going to think I'm so crazy. Oh, maybe they'll like me. Maybe I'll get new friends. Oh my God, my parents will disown me. Oh my God, what should I do? Should I get up? Should I not get up? You know what you do? You just get up, right? It's just so much easier. And in that moment in your life where you just get up, what happens is pretty amazing. What happened to me that night, that community will embrace you because you're taking chances, you're taking risks, as hard as it might be. And I challenge you to surround yourself like you do here with coaches and mentors and people that are going to help you out and friends that are close to you. and advisors. Because that adversity and those challenges in your life, it's going to happen. It's just part of life. Trust me. And that rejection, trust me. For every game that I get hired to, there's probably 5 teams that say no. But I celebrate that victory when someone believes in me. So you keep going. You know, when I started to do this, I told my dad, and my dad's like, no, you're not. I'm like, yeah, I am. I had to figure out a way. And it was really hard. My dad wanted me to get a job. I said, Dad, I'm not qualified to do anything. I've got to dance. And eventually my dad picked up on it and believed in me, which was pretty cool. And then there's the people that are going to, other voices and these people that aren't going to totally get it in your life. And then there's people that are going to throw hot dogs at you, because that's happened to me way too often. That's another story. But so what? As long as you believe, as long as you keep getting up, right? And when you get up, there's different opportunities that are going to happen that you have no idea, my friends. And trust me, it's that concept of showing up, full circle life, you don't even know. And if you could picture a place that you would never imagine in a million years would hire me to come in and fire up the crowd, what would you think? Would you think like the World Knitting Association? Maybe, right? No. The U.S. Open tennis in New York City. You know the tennis? Quiet, please. Quiet, please. 7 years ago, they decided, someone there, the way I look at it is they took off their mask. And they decided to take a chance on me. And so they brought me out. I performed in front of 25,000 people in Flushing Meadows, firing up the crowd. And when I fired up the crowd fired up the players. And when the players got excited, everyone was happy. Take it home. There's Novak Djokovic, someone who knows exactly what it's like to play without their mask on, to live without their mask on. And that moment was full circle for me because everyone was kind of cheering each other on and saying, you know what, let's just give this a try. And 7 years later, I've been performing every year at the U.S. Open in moments like that. You know, I didn't make that tennis team, but I made it to center court at the U.S. Open. I don't know how. I didn't make it on any hockey team I ever played. A couple years ago, I made it to the Stanley Cup Finals. You know, I tried every year to make it in basketball. And every time I go back to my hometown, I like to call up the coach that wouldn't put me on the team and let him know that I made it to the NBA Finals. So think about it. If I can figure out a way to make a living acting like a lunatic at sporting events and throwing T-shirts out and dancing like a nut, I'm pretty sure you can do whatever you want to do with your life. But what does make it look like to you? What does make it look like to you? And you need to define that and build your foundation right now. That's where the excitement is. That's where the excitement is. I want to challenge every single one of you in this room to get rid of that concept of having a mask on and to live your true self. And I want you to think of something right now. Think of something right now. This just get up moment that you want in your life. Whether it's joining a club, playing on a team, asking someone out but being too afraid, starting a job, starting an online business, starting a charity event. What is that for you? And I want you to think about it. When that is completely clear in your mind, I want you to stand up in this room. When I say go, I want you to stand up when it's clear in your mind. Stand up tall, stand up proud. Ready? And go. Feels pretty good, doesn't it? Feels pretty good, doesn't it? Look around you. The community is supporting you. Everyone in this room, the crowd wants you to succeed. Believe in yourself. Trust it. And keep getting on whatever chairs there are out there in your life and dance like everyone is watching. And promise me one thing. Promise me one thing. You'll keep taking those masks off for the rest of your life. Thank you so much, Eaglebrook. I'm cheering for you. Come on! Come on, other speakers, come on! Let's hear it for all the other speakers today! Everyone! And let's hear it for the TEDx Organizing Committee here in Eaglebrook! And let's hear it for you, the audience that came tonight! And let's hear it for Mr. Jim Fay for putting this together! More minutes, we're almost there. One more time, one more big cheer, here we go! Hey!
Living life is fun and we just begun to get our share.